Okay guys, welcome back to another episode of Rotten Reviews. On this episode I'm going to take a look at the 2008 film Twilight. Yeah, it's a 49% on the tomato meter and a 73% on the audience score. Well, we have 625,833 user reviews. Uh, Probably. And yet 73% fresh, upstanding bucket of popcorn. And I find that offensively, laughably ridiculous. This movie is completely rotten. It deserves to be rotten. It deserves to be pounded into the ground as rotten, and I'm sure many have, and I'm going to do so myself because I just can't resist. I've actually seen the book too. I attempted to read some of that to find out if it was in fact faithful to the book. It is faithful to the book. It is rotten. Rottenness taken straight from the book, so I judge the book to be rotten as well. It's not like the book was some masterpiece and this came out rotten because it's a bad adaptation. No, it's a good, accurate adaptation. Both the film and the book are rotten. Now, I will, in this episode of Rotten Reviews, only be reading and entertaining 3-star and below reviews. And the reason for that is, I'm sorry, I just don't believe the 5-star and the 4-star reviews. There's nothing redeemable to those levels to be found, and I'm not going to learn anything from those type of reviews. So it's going to be 3-star and below on my readings. I will accept nothing more than that. So let's get right into the audience reviews. Right off the bat, November 18, 2019, 1.5 stars. I had to watch that because of my daughter. I'd rather gone to the dentist. I agree. If I had to put a star rating to this, I say 1 star. 1 star max, that's peak. It often falls below that in my opinion. But yeah, 1 star. And right off the bat, I would say 1 star because this is the worst acting I've ever seen by Kristen Stewart particularly. The dialogue is really bad. Dialogue's taken straight from the book, so it's bad right from the book. The only thing that could be worse dialogue-wise is it could have actually the same misspellings that the book actually has. Somehow the book didn't have an editor, I guess, because dialogue and prose in the book is full of misspellings. Yeah, the movie doesn't have that because it's, it's spoken dialogue, right? That's the only way this dialogue could have been worse, is to somehow get the misspellings into it as well. In other words, it's complete shit. It's cringeworthy bad. The high school students, I've seen better portrayals in teen comedies of the acting, of the believability of these high school students. Their lines are cringeworthy bad. The visual look of the film is really bad. It's dull and gray and boring. I get that it's set on the Olympic Peninsula area of Washington State. I know that area well. It is not always overcast and raining, but even if it was, the whole color palette, even the indoor scenes of this movie are dull and gray and boring looking. So it's just bad. There's nothing redeemable about this. Piss poor acting, bad dialogue. There are vampires doing things that vampires do, like flying and leaping and whatnot, and they're obviously on wires, and it's laughably bad, and you can't quite see the wires, but you can see that they're being hoisted around on wires. They are on dollies in some parts, zooming around across the landscape, just literally standing on dollies that are being pulled underneath them. It is cringeworthy bad and off-putting to look at it. This should have been a teen comedy. There is a comedy based on this called Vampire Suck, and that was a lot better than this. This should have just been Vampire Suck to begin with, because this is just an abomination. In any case, I say it peaks at 1 star. Let's continue. 3 stars. It's fine, but it's the perfect movie to make fun of the whole time. Yeah, if you can sit through it long enough for that. It's not laugh out loud funny. It doesn't have comedy like that. It's not one of those so bad it's so good where you can drink beer and you can laugh out loud. No, it's just cringeworthy bad. It's really bad. 3 stars, yeah, to make fun of. 3.5, won't entertain it. 5 stars, won't entertain it. 2 stars, October 29th, 2019. The dialogue made me cringe. It was so bad. And I laughed when you find out why vampires can't go in the sunlight. It's so stupid, but I have seen worse films. Well, yeah, vampires can't go into the sunlight because they sparkle like kind of like a diamond, a crystal vase. A crystal vase would sparkle like this in the sunlight. That's why they can't go into the sunlight, because people will see them shining like diamonds. Yeah, but that's straight from the book. That doesn't really make the film bad, but it is shows you how stupid the plot is. That the story itself is really ridiculous. Let's continue down. Half a star. The title says it all. Okay. 1 star. September 13th of 2019. Was dragged to see this as a fresher in university, and I really wish I hadn't agreed to it. This film just verifies that the storytelling is piss poor, the acting is just awful, and the romance between Bella and Edward isn't believable in the slightest. And given that the whole franchise is meant to focus around their relationship, it would have helped to have actors who can work well together and portray love in a convincing manner. That said, though, the actual manner of the relationship isn't one to which anyone should. Yeah, it's supposed to be a teen romance, but it's more like a vampire stalking somebody, like a guy, a high school age guy. He's not high school age, but he's a high school student in this. High school student vampire stalking in a creepy way a high school girl, and the high school girl is not so much a dreamy high school girl, but a depressing, pathetic, um, irredeemable, unlikable character that should just stay in her room and not bother any of us. But yet we're supposed to go along with the story and sympathize with her. The only thing I would sympathize with her is if she cut her wrists right at the beginning of this and we moved on to somebody more interesting. It's ridiculous. Let's skip this rest of this. I will not entertain 4 or 5 star reviews. I just won't put up with reading them. It's ridiculous. 3 stars, August 2019. This is the most watchable one. Yeah, I'll have to agree. I tried to sit through the others. I believe I did sit through the second one. Fell asleep once, maybe. This one I fell asleep twice trying to watch it when it first came out. Had no idea it was bad. Hadn't heard anything about it. Just tried to watch it on home video twice. Couldn't make it through on 2 occasions. Finally, many weeks later, I actually saw the rest of it. Yeah, that's how bad it is. Very sleep-inducing. So is this the most watchable? Yeah, it probably is. Half a star. I made an account just to give this movie a review. I have seen a lot of bad movies in my life, but this is by far is unbearable. The acting is terrible. Something about the lighting gives me a headache, and I'm less than 20 minutes into the film. I have no idea what's going on. Someone help. 0 0.5 would probably watch again. I agree completely. 5 stars, no. 2 stars, Twilight is not as bad as I was expecting, but that doesn't make it an inherently good movie in its own right. The side characters are more interesting than the actual protagonists. The story has a creepy edge to it. Edward acts like a stalker as he stares at Bella when they first meet, for example. The plot has idiotic moments. Immortal, ageless vampires go to school, for example, and Bella feels insulted by Edward not saying a thing to her when in real life, people would just let it go by the time 3 days pass. Yeah, it's not an accurate portrayal of high school. It doesn't match up logically to what goes on in high school. It's completely ridiculous, again, from the book that vampires would need to perpetually stay in high school. No, they wouldn't. Half a star. Twilight was a big waste of time. It was corny to begin with and made it a sob story that goes on for far too long. The actors, the director, camera work, sets, effects, they are all bad. They knew this would be a quick paycheck. Unfortunately, we have to suffer through 4 more. Before it laid the rails, the train had already fallen over. It's that bad, and made worse with teen audiences who flocked to the shows. Why this was popular, I have no idea. Even the audience it was intended for will look back at the cringe. Yeah, I have no idea why word of mouth didn't just kill this thing before it could make anything in the theaters. It's so bad. It's a mystery. We'll never know the answer. 2 stars. A very boring movie that is just bad. Not so terrible that it's so bad it's good. It's just a boring movie that doesn't deserve the hate or praise it receives. I would say it does deserve the hate. but it doesn't deserve the praise. And yeah, you're right. It's too boring to be, to be fun making fun of it. It's just too boring for that. 2 stars. Bad CGI and pessimistic performance of Kristen Stewart make the film fail. Yeah, Kristen Stewart shouldn't even be an actress. This should have just like purged her from any Hollywood roles. This should have just killed her career off and spared us all. Just her weirdness, and trust me, it gets worse. There's nothing in 2019 that's particularly redeemable about Kristen Stewart. It just continues to get worse, and it's too bad this just end her career before we had to put up with anything else with her in it. Half a star. If I could give this 0 stars, I would. This movie is laughably bad. Unfortunately, it's not even laughable. You just don't laugh. You're just falling. I fell asleep twice trying to get through this thing. 2 stars. It's a very cringeworthy film. The way the film's shot doesn't work for me, and the acting is okayish. Very forgettable film. Not okay. 1.5 stars. I highly recommend the books to the movie, as the only good thing I found in these movies was the werewolves, and even those weren't in the first movie. The plot is decent enough, though somewhat unoriginal overall. Unfortunately, the movie focuses mainly on Bella, who is a disgraceful example of womankind being insanely weak, both mentally and physically. She also seems to have a panic attack every time she is too far away from Edward, or else is simply prone to constant hair pulling. Yeah, she's like the most unlikable, ridiculous teenage girl that you'd ever want to focus any story on, unless you wanted to watch her just cut herself. That would be entertaining. Um, it's really bad. And teen romance wise, you can make fun of the scene in which it takes them like over 2 minutes to actually kiss each other. It's supposed to be so dramatic and tense, tension filled, and it's completely laughable. It is the only laughable part. Is like when Bella and Edward actually kiss each other after a 2 minute like slow motion move towards kissing each other. That's pretty much laughable if you're drunk, but the rest of it's just damn boring. And the books, no, don't put yourself through that. You get 20 pages into the book and you realize it's worse than the movie, because now you can see the spelling and the grammar mistakes in the actual narration too. So the author is no better than a high school girl. In fact, an honors high school student would have done better editing and grammar in that book. And yet the book is still out there on bookshelves, and nobody attempts to fix the problems with it. What kind of editor did this? What kind of grammar this would be allowed to get into print? I don't know. I'm not talking about the dialogue that you would expect from teenagers, which is bad. I'm talking about just spelling and grammar errors and misuse of antonyms. It's just a pathetic book. I don't know how this even was published. I'm sure there's a story about how it was published, but it's just remarkable that this even got published, much less made into a movie. 2 stars. As I watched this movie when I was younger, it all sort of flew over my head. You're lucky. But watching it now, I can clearly see the lack of connection between the main characters, Edward and Bella. It's such a shame, too, because who doesn't love a vampire romance? We needed more vicious and animalistic behavior from Edward. He seemed a little too pathetic to have been a vamp. No, I disagree. Who doesn't love a vampire romance? No one loves a vampire romance. No adult does. Apparently, teenage girls do. I didn't ask for this or ask for anything like this, even if it did have good dialogue. 3.5 stars. I won't read it. Half a star. Possibly the worst movie and franchise in history. Terrible acting from people who are great actors. Awful plot holes and consistency. No, Kristen Stewart is not a terrific actor. Maybe some of the others could be. Maybe. Don't know, don't care. Kristen Stewart, sorry, she's gotten worse after this, not better. 2 stars, too strange. This movie is overhyped. It is very strange. How did this even become a thing? It's very, very strange. 2 stars, strange, awkward, bizarre. Nice, short and concise. We're multiple pages in because there's just so many weirdos with their 4 and 5 stars. 3 stars, very well written. It was smooth and emotional. The novels are bound to be far better than the films, even though I haven't read them yet. Yes, you'll get a surprise. Normally, I'd read the books first, but I didn't have the patience for this franchise. Good. Please don't put yourself through it. I anticipate reading them once I finish the films. It had a very simplistic yet challenging plot, which is very intriguing. It was challenging to stay awake. Yeah. Um, Challenge is just to get through the first one without falling asleep. 1.5 stars accurately represents the book. It's just a shame the book is also terrible. Yeah, exactly. I checked. The book is just as rotten as this film, guaranteed, but worse with the spelling errors and the grammar errors. 1.5 stars, mostly for the nostalgic value. Saw this film again 10 years after the initial release and found myself rather bored, though I cannot forget the impact it had on me when it first came out when I was 11. Definitely a film teens did enjoy, though I think it is fairly dated now, and I am unsure of its appeal to 2018 audiences and beyond. You're unsure? Is that a nice way of saying that this is garbage, and once the spell wore off in 2010 or 11, you came to your senses and realized you had been duped? It is bad when you realize that's happened, I know. 0.5 star. We're in October 2018. Twilight in a nutshell. Girl chooses between necrophilia or bestiality. Yeah, pretty much. That is accurate, believe it or not. 1.5 stars. God awful movie. How the fuck did this god awful boring movie get a 72% RT audience score? This movie should at least have a 26% RT audience score. Why the fuck does Hulk 2003, Daredevil 2003, Fantastic Four 2005, Fantastic Four Rise of the Silver Surfer, Blade Trinity, The Punisher 1989, The Punisher 2004, yeah, etc. This reviewer is listing off all kinds of movies that scored worse than this, that are bad, but they're better than this. A lot better than this. Very bizarre. 2 stars. Boring. Sorry, people who like this series. I won't judge you if you think differently of me, but I still don't think this is a great movie. Yeah, you're being kind. This movie's so bad you almost want to like insult the people that gave it 4 and 5 stars and just like insult them right to their face. It's so bad. That's not right, of course. That's not the right thing to do. But it's just like, it just begs you to insult them. But I won't do that. I'm restraining myself. That's why I'm only reading 3 star and below reviews. I can tolerate those. If I were actually to force myself to read the 5 star reviews on this, yeah, I might find myself actually attacking these people, and I don't want to do that. So let's go with this one, 0.5 star. The beginning of one of the most boring movie series ever. 2.5 stars. The movie, it's meh, just meh. I think that's giving it too much credit. This is worse than that. 1.5 stars. I don't get why everyone hypes this movie up so much. It's boring as shit. I have seen fucking fan fiction written by a 12-year-old that is better than this. Yeah, we all have. I've seen fan fiction half-assed that isn't even finished on the internet that's better than this, just in forum posts and stuff. This is some straight up crap. 1 star. Only thing fun or phenomenal about this movie is how easy and fun it is to bash it. The story sucks, the characters and acting suck, the effects suck. It really just sucks. Yeah, vampires suck. That movie was superior to this in every way. 2 stars. Vampires revamped. Aha. A lot of people say these movies are bad, and they are all right. Nothing can change this opinion. Why such strong feelings, you might ask? Hold on tight, Spider Monkey, because here are some problems I have with Twilight. Number 1, why are all of their names in lowercase on the promotional posters? As someone deeply invested in typography, this is devastating. Big mistake. Number 2, why did Jacob cut his hair? Was it because he never got a Pantene sponsorship? Okay, kind of tongue-in-cheek on this review. I think 2 stars is giving this too much credit. It's a solid like 1 star film. 3.5. Oh no, I'm not reading that. Nope. 2 stars. So to be fair, I am reviewing with no knowledge of the books. Story was at times interesting, but to be honest, the supporting actors are the stars of this movie. I found the romance very blah and without any passion or anything leading up to it. I can see being interested in the vampires as a whole, but I see nothing fascinating about Edward Cullen. I will say that I am fairly certain Jacob will be a more believable character than Edward. The antagonists of the movie were disappointing. They're again way too deep into this. They're almost sounding like a fan that they're so familiar with these characters. I disagree. I'm sorry. This is not even 2 stars. It's 1 star. Half a star. Rubbish movie, terrible CGI, confusing and boring plotline. Would not recommend. I agree 100% with that. 5 star. Nope. 2 stars. I'm not a big fan of Twilight, so in my opinion, it's just an okay movie. Nothing special. Wow, you're being so kind. Okay. 3 stars. I will defend this movie. The soundtrack is amazing and it is visually surprising, but some of the acting is a bit cringy. Visually surprising. It's visually surprising to me when I see people hoisted up trees on wires and I can tell that they're hoisted up a tree on wires. It's surprising that that makes it into a modern day movie. Yeah. 2 stars. 2008 gave us films such as Iron Man, The Dark Knight, and Wall-E. It also unfortunately featured Twilight. Now, as a reader of the Twilight saga, when I heard this movie based off the book was being produced, I was surprised. The books weren't anything to be admired, and their author is infamous for writing bad books. I have to tell you that the film, though a slight improvement from the books, is still boring, monotone, and poorly directed. Yeah, when I think about the author, it almost seems to me it's somebody's experiment. Like this was an experiment in some kind of thought control or mind control on young teen girls, and I guess it was a success. Um, but yeah, commercially, who would risk their money making some trash like this? It's like it was some kind of experiment on some level. That's what it feels like. Half a star. Edward Cullen needs to grow some balls. He doesn't have any pupes. LOL, blah, 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 blah. They're giving it half a star, but they're like telling me that there's issues with the story and the characters. But they seem like a fanboy with all those, or a fangirl with all those capitals. So I don't actually agree with them, despite the half a star. 1.5 stars. My ego don't allow me to give this better ratings, but I still think this is a modern classic, one of the best castings in the U.S. movie history. Really? Well, if you're saying that Kristen Stewart is like a really crap actress and she belongs in a really crap movie, then yeah, they plugged the two elements together the right way, I guess. 2.5 stars. A weak story, but sort of a guilty pleasure. I have a place in my heart for crappy movies that I love to hate to love, and this one is one of them. Really, Bruce W. Guilty pleasure. I feel guilty just reading that you find this to be a guilty pleasure. That's how bad this is. Half a star, title, Twilight, blah, blah, blah. 1.5 stars. Sometimes you have to watch movies that you are 100% sure you won't like. This is one of those times. Sometimes you have to watch them. Did somebody pay you to watch this? Okay. Half a star, bad. Half a star, awful, poorly written book turned into same kind of movie. The acting in all these movies is horrible, all but Taylor. He was doing the best he could to carry this rubbish. I'm going to say vampires do not sparkle. They can't have children, as in the final book and movies. If you have seen the X-Files and Underworld, then you will know this story is a complete rip-off of these. Werewolves versus vampires, Underworld, vampires in the daylight and not attacking humans, X-Files. Yeah, okay, I don't get that. This is just a really bad teenage fan fiction, yet it was written by an author that was clearly over the age of 30. It's really bizarre, but it comes across as fan fiction that like an 11 or 12-year-old girl would think is cool. Very bizarre. 1 star, written by a Mormon 40-year-old woman with a twisted fantasy sex life. Oh, was she 40? Okay, that's worse. Mormon, I don't know. I'm not sure. Maybe she was very repressed and this was her only way out of her situation. Again, it's like she would have had to have been an 11 or 12-year-old girl trapped in a 40-year-old woman's body. But still, how did this get published? Still don't know that. 2.5 stars, cheesy, mindless entertainment if you're in the right mood. No, it's not all that. Sorry, fanboy. 2 stars. Yes, I watched it and my sanity remained intact. It wasn't that awful. What I do come away from it with, my biggest bug, is Kristen Stewart's acting. Now I'm I'm one of only a handful of people who hasn't read the book, so I don't know if Bella is written this way. And Stewart was staying true to the source material, but Kristen's Bella was so pale and lifeless that she struck me as more the vampire type character than Edward. It irked me to no end how she couldn't say one sentence without pauses. Yes, she was written that way in the book. I know because I read enough to know. Yeah, the book, this is faithful to the book, but on top of that, it's got bad acting, and Kristen Stewart just got worse from here. Trust me, it's not good. 3 stars. We're in August 30, 2017. Okay, I haven't seen Twilight since it came out in theaters. That's nearly a decade. But for some reason, it popped up on Netflix, and I figured I'd give it another go. Honestly, the premise is rather cool. I like the whole vampire scenario. It's just the acting. Kristen Stewart just wasn't ready for acting yet. Robert actually did a whole lot better, in my opinion. I even like Kristen's high school friends at the school. Great cast. The movie is definitely manageable, and there are parts of it that I like. I disagree. You're still suffering from too much of that old fangirl stuff that was going on when you were a kid and you saw this. No, there is nothing here to be found. It's not like Stewart wasn't ready for acting. She hasn't gotten any better. She's just as unlikable as she was in this film today. Rather cool, no. There's nothing even about the premise that's rather cool. It's rather stupid. If you still think it's cool, you're still under this Stockholm syndrome that this thing puts you under. You have to be. You just have to be. 2.5 stars. For everyone who read this book before the movie, this was a disappointing film to say the least. I disagree. The book was worse. Spelling and grammar errors, but the same exact story. Edward doesn't look like the right at all. He's not handsome or strong in the film like the book portrays him, which is so sad. Somehow Stewart manages to make Bella even more mousy and whimpery than in the novel. I think this movie suffered from lack of a good script and bad acting. You see, I don't know, I'm a man, and this is written by a woman. Women, sometimes they say, well, no, in the book he was supposed to be all handsome and everything, and he's not. And then other women say that Robert Pattinson is so handsome and everything. I don't know. Women are all over the place. I guess it depends on how old they are as to how attractive Robert Pattinson is in the film. It's definitely psychological. It's not just physical. You know how they say with men it's more visual. Obviously that's true because you don't get men disagreeing on whether people are attractive like this in movies, but women do. It's obviously not just visual. 1.5 stars, July 2017. This movie feels like it was written and produced by a target audience, tween-age girls. I agree, it was written by one too, but yet it was written by a 40-year-old woman. That's the funny part. 0.5 star. There are no words to describe how awful the shit show that this movie and its successors are. I was forced to watch these movies, and they're not the type of awful that you like because it's awful or that you have to watch because it's awful. It's awful like I wish this shit never saw the light of day, and the movies made me cry tears of pain knowing that anyone was crying because they felt anything other than disgust for this trash. I pretty much agree with that whole thing. I don't know how you were forced to watch it. Did your wife do it? Your daughter? Your mom? I don't know, but it sounds pretty traumatic. You might need to seek one of those help programs, you know, the ones where they sit around in chairs and they kind of talk things over with each other. It could fix that for you. January 2017, 2.5 stars, tasteless, cliche, sexist, a regurgitation of the same vampire theme that has been repeated for decades. I consider the books to be bland. I didn't know the movies would be so much worse. Yeah, well, I disagree on your 2.5 stars. Try 1 star. Try one. Let's continue down here. 2.5 stars. Twilight fans will squeal with delight, but more discerning viewers will be sickened by the movie's uneven acting and corny dialogue. Yeah, but how do you give it more than 1 star? I don't know. 2 stars. Eric Russell likes this movie because he hates America. I'm not sure who that is or what you're referencing, but this could be a form of a terrorist attack. If people were forced to watch this, like imagine a scenario in which hackers took over like US satellite, like they took over DirecTV, for example, and every single feed was Twilight or one of its sequels. This would be considered a terrorist attack on the United States, and I guarantee you that the government would not screw around in retaliating against whoever did this. They would be hunted down and destroyed. Because, yeah, that's an attack if you were to do something like that. So don't put yourself through this unless you want to be attacked. You have your sensibilities attacked. Half a star, August 21st, 2016. Screw this. How the hell is this even considered horror? This is an absolute disgrace to the horror genre to even describe this as horror. Well, I'll have to disagree. This wasn't really marketed as horror. It's not supposed to be horror. It's like some kind of weird dark teen romance love story. You're supposed to cry tears of joy for Bella. But yeah, it's horrific in that it probably horrified you or traumatized you because you weren't expecting it to be that. But it's bad regardless, okay? Half a star. If you paid money to see this, you are part of the problem. I'll have to agree with it. That's why I'm not reading 4 and 5-star reviews, because I consider those to be part of the problem, and I just don't want to have to deal with those. Half a star. My favorite bit was when Bella, perhaps the most pathetic female character available for young girls to idolize, was thrown around in the ballet studio at the end, because it made me feel better about sitting and watching her be miserably inadequate throughout the rest of the film. Yeah, she's like the most unlikable, unrelatable, irredeemably worthless character that a movie tries to get you to sympathize with. She's there to be rescued multiple times. She can't even bring herself to speak without mumbling like an incoherent moron. It's bad. Half a star. Vampires don't sparkle in the damn sunlight. That's a good one to leave this one on. It's funny how, I told myself I wouldn't read anything above 3 stars in the reviews, the audience reviews. And yet this has an audience review of 73%, and I didn't have any problems reading off everything, finding lots of reviews well below 3 stars. So if this is so great, how come it was so easy for me to find these bad reviews? I don't know, 600,000 plus reviews, 73%. Somebody's clearly part of the problem out there. There's no question about that. This is offensive to me, and I've got to get out of here before, something really bad happens and I feel even worse than I do. So I will see you all again on another episode of Rotten Reviews.